Hello everyone, Mahojo here. Today I'm going to be making a quick response to a Mr. Willy OAM. He's a very good YouTuber, which I've watched many a time. He seems very experienced, he seems to be good faith, he doesn't seem to have any strange ulterior motives. I'm just interested in something that he keeps saying. And Willy, I know it seems like I'm filming in some sort of liminal space if you see this, but I'm a real person. This space looks a lot less liminal in the day. Nice little windows background, nice little liminal tree. But yeah, I'm just very interested in something that Mr. Willy OAM has been saying recently about the Ukraine war. That's the main thing his channel is about. He does these daily updates. They're very good, very analytical, somewhat repetitive, but that's the nature of it. He's just reporting on the facts, and sometimes the facts and the reality is very repetitive. Something that he has been saying to his rather large audience is that, and he does all the necessary conditioners, qualifiers. He's, reasonably tepid. He doesn't claim to be some sort of expert. Neither do I. I'm got a lot less expertise than him. I believe he was a corporal in the infantry. Well, he was technically infantry, but I think he had he was in signals control. He was a signals something to do with signals. Okay, but he has proper field experience in the military. And something that he tepidly claims is that if he was in the position of the Ukrainian High Command, and specifically if he was in the position of President Zelensky, with the context before him of the situation on the battlefield of the war in Ukraine right now, he would come to the negotiating table because he believes that would be the best way to save lives, which what it's all about in the end of the day. He believes that would be the best way to save lives and specifically prevent a collapse of the Ukrainian front line. He has correctly identified, which many have in the past, the profound manpower shortage of the Ukrainian army right now, especially the infantry. He does, love to talk about the infantry as an infantryman, which is fair enough, but it is true. Even from my limited knowledge, I do know that the infantry is the most important bread and butter part of an army. It's ancient. Didn't have artillerymen 200 years ago. We had infantry 2,000 years ago. Hopefully someone doesn't fact check me on that and say, oh well, in this war 200 years ago, 205 years ago they had this artilleryman. But he has correctly identified this profound shortage, and what he says in response to that, and in a couple of other pretty major issues, is that in order to stop a routing and a collapse of the Ukrainian position and massive territorial and human losses in the war, Ukraine should sue for some sort of peace. And the reason I feel like I can comment on this with a little bit of confidence is that, thankfully, negotiation in the abstract, and when you're talking about these large-scale things, whether it's, to negotiate or not to negotiate, it's much less of a technical thing. It's a lot more about human psychology. I feel like I can comment on that as a human who has psychology. It's a lot more about psychology in the abstract, the art of negotiation itself. I would not comment with any sort of confidence or make any sort of video about infantry tactics, for example. This is a very zoomed out thing. This is something that I feel like is just about humanity and is about psychology in general and about very broad concepts. So the reason that I think it's worth saying that it would not be a good idea to reduce harm for the Ukrainian military, to make pretty major territorial concessions in order to stop the fighting in Ukraine. For example, giving up the cities of Sloviansk and Kramatorsk, and probably by default giving up the rest of the Donbass that hasn't been occupied right now. The reason I think that would be a bad idea is because in order to have a proper negotiation about something like this, in order to work out some sort of actual deal about something like this, you need a couple of things. You need clear expectations in a different set of situations, and you need commitments related to those expectations, and then behind that you need the concrete ability to act out those commitments according to those expectations. So if you're Zelensky right now, you're thinking, okay, if I give up Sloviansk and Kramatorsk and, you know, the other areas in the rest of the Donbass, not trying to minimize those areas, obviously lots of people live there, horrible. If I give up those areas, what can I expect? And what can I expect if I don't? Is there any difference between those expectations? And is there any commitments I or anyone else can make to those expectations, and can we back them up? So let's go through a couple of hypotheticals. So they give up the Donbass, right? I'm not claiming these timeframes are realistic. Let's just have some timeframes. So let's say this Alaska thing happens in a week. You know, the situation deteriorates to such a degree that Zelensky feels it's realistic to sign a deal. Let's say a deal gets signed in 7 days. It's not going to happen, probably. Say a deal gets signed in 7 days. Then a month after that, over that month, there's a controlled retreat from the rest of the Donbass. So in 5 weeks' time, the line is up to the end of the Donbass. So that would be what? Mid to late September, the guns fall silent. And then what would happen if the next day, let's say it's 25th of September, or a week after, let's say it's the 1st of October, or a month after, let's say it's late October? What would realistically happen if the guns just started firing again? They just said, thank you for that land. We'll just start, everyone's talking in the abstract about, oh, what if in 5 years' time, 3 years' time, when Russia's reconstituted, what if they attack? We don't even need to talk about that. What are the expectations that are stopping Russia from attempting to attack the next day? What happens the next day? You see, it doesn't work because there's no extra commitment. There's no signaling. There's no knowledge of commitment by Putin from Western leaders. Ukraine has already been invaded. There's already been a massive violation. There's already been a massive controversy that is very much not in the interest of Western leaders. So if basically the status quo is almost maintained, or maybe you could call that not a maybe you could call that not a maintenance of the status quo, but if there's another scandal and Western leaders are scandalised and insulted again, is there that expectation that there'd be any sort of escalation? Ukraine can't escalate. They've already got a profound manpower crisis. So where's the commitment and the expectation coming from? There is no expectation really you can apply to Western leaders. There has been this rather tepid, extremely moderate, underwhelming commitment to actually supporting Ukraine in a physical, concrete sense. What was it? 1/3 artillery shells by the end of 2024. September, October 2024, when it was meant to be 1 million. Maybe they got to 500,000. I haven't checked the specific numbers, but we'll remember the headlines. Well, I do at least. I'm a nerd. Maybe Willy probably remembers the headlines as well. It was 1/3. It was coming up to the end of the year. They committed 1 million, 1/3. The entirety of Europe. They still haven't been spinning up the artillery. It's all been, this namby-pamby stuff. We'll give you loans. Sometimes we'll just give you money that we don't have. We'll just print more bonds and we'll just go into more debt. We'll give you our fake debt money that you can buy stuff. But they need to buy it from somewhere. Or maybe you can just pay employees with money that we don't have to make the stuff. So yes, at least you can make stuff in Ukraine while it's being bombed. And maybe we'll give you some HIMARS when you need artillery, you need bullets, you need rockets, you need men, you need small vehicles, you need large vehicles. They needed, a bit late for tanks now, but they needed tanks in 2023, 2024. But this namby-pamby neoliberal capitalist way of going about things where, we'll spin up our tank production and artillery production in 5 years. in the UK, at least from our side of things, in 2023 it came out, right, we're octupling our artillery production. Yeah, we're building a new factory in Wales, where when it's done, we'll be able to increase our artillery production 8 times over. Yeah, it'll be done in 2027, 2028. Excuse me? 2027 to 2028, and knowing the UK, if that's delayed a year, which will be lucky, you're talking 2028 to 2029 when that's opened. And sorry, octupling from what? What's our current artillery output? Our current artillery output at that time was 16,000 a year, and they can increase it a little bit. There's a little bit of short-term latency where they can maybe do 20,000-30,000 a year. Oh, so by 2028, 2029, if things go well, we're going to potentially increase our artillery output to what's that? 100 to 200,000. Okay, that's like a month in this war. 100 to 200,000. Okay, that's nothing still, and we're doing that a year in 3 years and 5 years from that point if things go well. That pattern and that mindset and that delay and that way of going about this bureaucratic, extremely 10 layers of contractors scraping things off the top so everyone gets enriched as much as possible, and this low efficiency, this very capitalistic way of going about things, that is being repeated all over Europe, especially in America. I mean, in America, there's different forces at play where they have a genuine interest in maintaining a stake in being the world's superpower. There is an actual interest from the government, and more of an interest in actual military capability. So that's balanced. So they can do things a little bit quicker, a little bit. But that lack of response to the real truth that they need artillery, vehicles, bullets, rockets 3 years ago, and the fact that in 3 years' time that has not happened. Germany's still taking Russian gas and oil. This thing of like, we're going to wean off Russian gas by 2029, maybe that's been brought forward now, I don't remember. In 2022 and 2023 they were saying we're going to wean off Russian gas and oil by 2029. Pretty sure there's still other countries in Europe taking Russian oil and gas. I think maybe Romania. I know the Baltic states aren't. Poland isn't now. Poland made the very brave step of, in 2024, I think it was, finally cutting off from Russian oil and gas. Very, very brave. Romania. I think Slovakia might have done it recently. I think some of the... Correct me if I'm wrong on this. I think some of the Scandinavian states still take in Russian oil. But 3.5 years it's been since Russia did a full-scale invasion in Europe by land area, excluding Russia, the biggest country in Europe. And now, probably talking, if we include Russian soldiers, Ukrainian soldiers and civilians, you're probably talking about over 1 million people have died by now. Mass death event. Proper major war. And it's been 3.5 years, and we've still got European countries using Russian oil and gas. Whee! They haven't bit the bullet and tried to find some sort of way in those 3.5 years to balance out any potential market disadvantages that would take by massively boosting green energy, massively boosting biofuel, massively boosting nuclear. And there's these excuses about green energy where it's not the key. This is the true thing, where it's not the same with the power grid, where because it's not its own storage, oil and gas is its own storage. But the issue with green energy is you need humongous amounts of batteries to store all this stuff, and then when you're trying to get these massive battery ranks, it's a whole different ball game. You need to majorly redesign your electricity grid. So that is a big headache, which takes years, maybe decades, if you're a modern major European country, one with a lot of industry like Germany, very electricity intensive. That is a real concern, which is being used as an excuse, because hello, what's this? Nuclear fission. It doesn't take that long in the grand scheme of things to build a nuclear fission plant, especially if you've got the proper high commitment of the government when there's a major war going on in Europe. The German government could have built multiple nuclear fission plants by now. You can just plug that in. There's no fundamental difference there. That is compatible with regular normal electricity grids as they are. You don't need to fundamentally change the electricity grid there. It's just a different form of energy that can be treated entirely the same. It's its own storage, like hydrocarbons. Oil and gas is its own storage. The fissile material, the nuclear material, is its own storage. And the transportation is so much less of a headache. Because instead of having millions of bloody barrels of oil going through a pipeline that needs to be maintained, or God forbid, if you cut off the pipeline, going through trucks, you can just transport relatively compared to that, really small amounts of nuclear fissile material. Obviously you need some safety concerns that go into that, but comparatively it's so much less of a headache. Germany, industrial powerhouse, could have already made a couple new nuclear power plants. And you can spin up biofuel plants much less. Again, if it's an industrial economy and they're committed to it, in less than a year, you can have a few new biofuel plants spun up again. Where's this? It's been 3.5 years. Where's this rapid acceleration of green energy? Where is this rapid acceleration of the battery manufacturing, the battery development, the purchase and nationalisation of the rare earth mineral mines and plants, exploration of potential rare earth mineral sites in Europe? Where's this cutting deals? Where's this deal making with the rare earth mineral suppliers of lithium and things like that? Of cobalt, sorry, I struggle with that word. Cobalt and other other precious things. Well, not precious, you know what I mean. None of that's been happening. Very low commitment from the West. Donald Trump, you can't trust a thing he says. He says 10 different things about this war, back and forth. The unbelievable number of commitments that he's walked back on, not just with this, but with tariffs. It's embarrassing. He'll say something about tariffs, 10 days later gets walked back. Even the Indian thing, like the Indian government can't trust that he's going to deliver on these 25% tariffs because he hasn't delivered in the form that he says he will on a single one of these tariffs from week one, from the first week. He had been backtracking, he's been chicking out on these tariffs, and then they come back and they're off again, it's reduced and it's increased, and it's... So how the hell could any commitment from America be properly attached to any sort of expectation? How could any commitment be attached to any sort of expectation which is attached to any sort of battlefield reality? So it has been profoundly proven through several different aspects, time and time again, that Western leaders have no real commitment, low commitment to doing anything. And that ultimate plaster ripping, that ultimate violation has already been done. It already happened when there was a large-scale invasion in February 2022. So really, if a ceasefire is signed, and then fuck it, the next day, if the next day the guns start up again, and what, maybe the European leaders bloody assume, because they would, wouldn't they? They would maybe assume that there is going to be at least a few years. Putin wouldn't. He wouldn't have the cheek. He wouldn't dare, because we're powerful. They're bloody ridiculous. Maybe they would assume there's going to be a few months of quiet at least, even if Putin has plans to do it again. They keep underestimating his cheek, his gall, his resolve. Maybe they think there's at least going to be a few months we can send over some more high-tech, send over another HIMARS system, a few more tanks, a few more jets, stuff that they don't need. They need bullets and bombs and artillery. Maybe we can sell, maybe in that time we'll have, 50,000 more artillery shells over there. But then literally the next day, what would actually happen? Really think about it. Like, yeah, obviously that would be a massive scandal. He'd really be taking the piss. That would be really cheeky from Putin, obviously. And maybe they would be mad. The Western leaders would be mad. Europeans would be mad. Trump would be mad. But what would they actually do? Really? That ultimate violation has already been done. There's already a gigantic war going on in Ukraine. So it's not even talking about people get distracted, I think, talking about this abstract thing of, oh well, in another 8 years. Why is there an expectation of anything? The whole point of a negotiation and signing some sort of agreement is that both sides have an expectation, as I said at the start. There needs to be an expectation that Russia is going to stop. There needs to be any sort of, again, commitment that Russia can make, and Ukraine can make a commitment to that commitment, which can be backed up by expectations that happen if that commitment is broken, and there needs to be an ability on top of that commitment. Even if there was new commitment, okay, what's going to happen? If the rest of Donbass is taken, the south, Kherson and Zaporizhia are left as they are. Kharkiv is left as it is, okay? Next day, they advance north into Zaporizhia, towards Zaporizhia city, to fulfill the thing Putin said about the 4 Oblasts, Kherson, Zaporizhia, Donetsk and Luhansk. Even if this unlikely thing, oh, sorry, not to mention there's no unity between Europe and US. Nobody knows what's going on. The US is busy doing their own thing with domestic fascism. They haven't even got the proper bureaucratic team set up yet. It takes hundreds of people to do all these international deals. They haven't even it's been 5-6 months. They haven't even finished hiring the teams yet to do any of this stuff, and it's just happening anyway. Trump just says, let's just do it, and nothing ends up happening because they haven't got the teams, they haven't got the commitment. Trump hasn't got the mental capacity to do it himself, or the cabinet's busy. They're like, what the fuck is he doing? We don't care, we just want to do domestic fascism. And there's no unity between Europe and America. So whatever decisions do get made will have to be either Europe or the US. If they have the commitment to do anything, then how long is it going to take? Because they haven't really started spinning up anything in earnest. They haven't even really started accelerating the industry in earnest, have they? It would take a couple of years before anything starts ticking up properly. So in the short term, to really put their foot down, to really show they're mad, and to really put a stop to this, say this is unbelievably abhorrent, that this deal has just been made, and he has took the ultimate move, the ultimate insult, to the day after, literally the day after, Ukraine has done this controlled retreat and the guns fall silent. What would they even do in the short term? They don't have many artillery shells in storage. They've got their own national stores. Even if we're assuming that they suddenly have the commitment to give over their national reserves, which again, if Ukraine is currently being invaded, and again, we don't know what Russia want, it's a little bit hazy. Maybe they want the 4 Oblasts. Maybe they want to go all the way up to the Dnieper River. Maybe they still want regime change. Maybe they want to go to Kiev still. And at this point, who's to say that's even entirely unrealistic? So they don't have that commitment now, but even assuming that they even have that commitment to give it over any of their national reserves, what are they going to get? Like, how much can they give out of those reserves? What? 100,000 maybe? Oh, okay. They're going to give 100,000 artillery shells. That'll show him. When, that's nothing in this war. That's nothing. Well, maybe we'll give them jets. Maybe we'll give them F-16s. We've got a lot of them. We haven't given them many. Well, how many? How many would they give? We're going to give 50? 100? Enough to retake air superiority? Maybe you need 50, maybe you need 100, maybe you need more. They're going to give all of them, are they? Okay. I don't know if I buy that. And even if so, how much would that really do? You give a massive amount of extremely expensive jets. For what advantage? Air superiority is a massive force multiplier. It is not a replacement for the forces themselves. They're running out of men. They almost have no men. It's a little bit late. It's not too little too late, but it's the wrong thing too late. So again, something like artillery would be much better. Again, it can't replace just having people, but again, it's all this it's this high-tech stuff where we can give them jets. And I mean, the fact that they've given them, what, is it 20, is it 30? It's some low double-digit number of F-16s already. Even if Ukraine makes the Russia makes the massive insult of just starting again straight away. Not even with any sort of facade, you know, not even with any sort of delay. And they give 50, 100, they happen to give 50, 100 F-16s. They really dig deep into those stockpiles. Would that even be enough to make a massive difference? They've got air superiority, okay, but they've got no infantry to take it, and the infantry have no artillery to go with. It's not even a matter of long-term commitment, this abstract, no, we're not even at that. This long-term, oh, in 8 years, what's to stop Russia attacking in 8 years? No, what's to stop Russia attacking in 8 hours? 8 minutes, what's to stop Ukraine retreating out of the Donbass, and then Russia literally just starting again? The level of commitment, I feel like Willy is really overestimating, despite how extremely critical he is. He is really overestimating or not realizing. Okay, no, it's probably better to say he's not properly comprehending the implications of the extremely low level of commitment that Western leaders have shown towards Ukraine and towards its sovereignty. So let's put military aside. Let's take military off the table. Let's take that off the table. So economic. All this talk about secondary sanctions, it's a matter of timing. And also, let's talk about two things: hydrocarbons and secondary sanctions. It's a matter of timing. Okay, let's do the hydrocarbons first, actually, because this is the clearest example. So, despite the fact that, as I said, there hasn't been enough commitment in coming off Russian hydrocarbons, commitment is largely about time. There's a massive time factor, where again, although what Europe has done already is not enough, if it did that in February 2022, just hypothetically, if that reduction in the import of Russian hydrocarbons happened in 2022, in the first 6 months even, that would be a lot worse for Russia. That would be so much worse. You would maybe even be talking about this hypothetical Russian economic collapse. That would be a lot closer, at least. And you would actually have done something early on to kneecap Russia and to really hamper their current efforts, which are happening right now, which were funded by that oil. But here's the thing. It gives you less of a trigger to take now. So if that happened, let's say hypothetically, Europe had the commitment to say, okay, now this is a bridge too far. Now Germany is going to completely stop the import of hydrocarbons. All these countries, Spain, France, these Scandinavian countries, Austria, Slovakia, Czech Republic, you know what I mean, Italy, everyone's going to stop. That wouldn't be enough to collapse Russia or anything. It would be bad for them, and it would be a good step. It's technically a positive, but you've slow rolled the cards. You've put down one card, then another card, then another card. Part of the point is the time aspect. It's the shock. So ironically, by taking this slow rolling approach, if Europe wanted to do something sudden, either with hydrocarbons or some of the other trade which is exempt, they've now got less ability to do that. So you can't take this massive step. Maybe this might be a little bit too far, but hypothetically, if Europe somehow found the commitment to say every single European country that is now importing any Russian oil or other hydrocarbons, it stops tomorrow. If they physically shut off the pipes tomorrow, the day after, if that happens, that might not be enough to really collapse the Russian effort or make them particularly stop. Or at least, maybe make them stop, but then they've just got the Donbass anyway. And, then you're opening the door to, okay, when the new status quo arrives in 8 years, then, see, it's your one level backwards. You've already blown up, you've already played that big card, which they're going to absorb. That's not going to cause regime change in the Kremlin. You've slow rolled the cards, so you've taken your own power away to play future cards. And this thing about the secondary sanctions, okay, so despite you would need commitment from both America and Europe. You need unity, because almost by their nature of the secondary sanctions, the countries that are doing them are not allies. Almost definitionally, that's true. You've got Turkey, even though I know it's in NATO and all that, but it's more of a neutral country. It's not on either side of this broad thing of West versus right, West versus East. I saw West as left, so left and right. But Turkey, broadly a neutral country, tries to be a mediator. India, broadly a neutral country, tries to be a mediator. Kazakhstan, obviously much less so of a neutral country. Recently more trying to be a bit of a neutral country. Trying to sort of escape the Russian sphere a little bit. The ex-Soviet sphere, but still obviously a big trading partner and technically an ally of Russia. So these are not, it's not like Poland, where if Poland got cut off from the EU, that would be a really bad thing. In order to affect, especially Kazakhstan, what? Okay, so if Europe say, okay, they'd have to negotiate, that would take a fucking ages with the UK. So if you had the EU and the UK to try and maximise the effect, even if you got the EU and the UK together, and maybe Switzerland and all that, you got them all to whole Europe together to unite and say, we will cut off all trade with you. Even if they took that maximalist approach, if they found that commitment somewhere, it's Kazakhstan. They're not particularly linked up to the international global markets. You can't target abstract financial sectors. You can't particularly target the service sector. It's a bit of a fucked country, to be honest. I've looked into the history a little bit. It's very fucked over, mostly by the Soviet Union and the Russian Federation for a long time. They together cannot put, even the entirety of Europe cannot put massive pressure on Kazakhstan. A lot of it is regional trade, a lot of it is with Russia, with India, with all the other stands, with China. It's more in that Eurasian sphere. It's not really the mainstream, mainland European sphere. If the US said, okay, we're going to completely cut off, okay, that's even less. Obviously there is trade, but there isn't much trade with the US, so, but it'd have to be together. Anything with Kazakhstan or India or anything, it would have to be the unity. Is the unity there between US and Europe? So sorry for that massive rant, but that's what I'm saying, is that in order to have any sort of negotiation, any sort of agreement, to have any sort of faith in any sort of agreement, there needs to be expectations, backed up by commitments, backed up by ability. There's no expectation of anything. We still don't even know what Russia wants, what their expectations are without a deal, what it is with a deal. But there's no expectations on Europe, what we expect them to do without a deal, with a deal. If a deal's broken, no expectations, no commitment to those expectations, because Europe has no commitment. You can't get a commitment from America because Trump's word means nothing. The US president's word means nothing. So you can't get any commitments from America. There's no unity, so you can't make a united Western commitment because there's no unity between the US and Europe. There's nothing. There's no commitments you can get, either through the veracity and the commitment to the commitment, and also commitment as in a more moral sense, like your commitment to do something. There is no vector of commitment whatsoever, and the ability to back up any commitments that might get made isn't there because there's been no long-term preparation. So there's no expectations, there's no commitment, there's no ability to enact those commitments. So how could there ever be any sort of agreement? What are you meant to expect? What are you meant to commit to? What are you meant to enforce the commitment with? What's meant to happen with any sort of agreement? It's just impossible. Like, I just hope that Willy, I don't know, sees that, or maybe if I'm wrong, he comes back, because again, he's got proper experience, he's been doing this for a long time. Hopefully he comes back, and I just want to know, because to me it seems like there is no backing, there's no foundation, there's no nothing, there's no backstop for any sort of agreement or deal whatsoever. So thanks for watching this. If you could slog through this, maybe Willy will see this, Willy OAM, check him out, I'll link him. Seems like a cool guy, seems like a good guy, but yeah, it's just horrible, this whole situation, horrible. Hopefully it does get resolved though. Hopefully we get a good peace that somehow there's some sort of committable, enforceable, just peace, that people just stop fucking dying. But yeah, try and have a good day. Maybe if you like this video, like it. If you want to subscribe to Willy OAM. Good channel, good guy, hopefully, seemingly. I don't know him, but yeah, try and have a good day. Bye bye, see ya.